Religion is the opiate of the masses. Uh, Karl Marx said that, and of course a Marxist would say that, right? But would you expect a typical dissident right response from me, or some kind of alt-right response from me to say and point the finger at, well, the Chosenites or any kind of thing like that? It's a possibility, but let's go a little bit. Let's go a little bit deeper. Let's go a little bit more philosophical and esoteric with this notion. Instead of just quantifying it or having some kind of, in essence or essential argument to be something quantifiable to the effect of like, well, religion is just useful, having a very Western Christianity kind of take on it. Well, it's just here to quell or tame people's passions or to be a useful tool to keep certain aspects of people down, to keep certain races of people down, to control the population, or it's a giant money laundering scheme, things of this nature, like just damnable kind of things to say about on how it's used as a tool of control, tool of the government, things of that nature. Because I mean, a church is essentially a governing body. A church of Buddhism, a church of Hinduism, a church of this, church of Native Americans, all that stuff. If people want to have, and church is the only like really real way I can. And it's not. They're obviously not true churches, you know, but that's the only like quantifiable way in the Western context to say, well, that's an organized body of a religion, right? That's how that's how we can say instead of just going and explaining the whole gamut, just say it's the church of something, right? It's a false church. It's not correct, but it's the only way you can do it. And how is that opiate used, right? How is that how's that opium prescribed, right? Well, to say, it's different in Orthodox asceticism, it completely is. It's not something that is used as a control mechanism. No, it's not how we see it at all. And obviously, if you're familiar with the religious persecutions from the Bolsheviks, and if you're familiar with the inclinations that Marx had and him, I mean, it's weird too because in the American context, they're oh well, if you point out and who led these revolutions, you're being anti-Semitic. But the problem is that Karl Marx was vehemently anti-Semitic, and he was very, very focused on um, dealing with the problems that they brought about in other countries and their subversions and things like of that nature, right? But the issue with this is that out of all those churches and those dead religions and those synagogues, whatever, right? Those are all dead faiths. Those are all faiths that aren't true. So right there, you have an issue. When you're worshiping something dead, no wonder why it's going to feel like a obligation, a something that is, and with that overall opium or with that dead worship, it can feel like a drug. It can feel like an addiction that you have to come back to. It can feel like something that is you're obligated to do so, right? So it's going to crush your will. It's going to submit you to something that is dead. That is, well, as as the world embraces that death, right? So if you're of the world, it's embracing a deathly notion. It's embracing something that is essentially not alive. And if it's not alive in Christ, then they don't have that understanding, right? Camera's wobbly. But it's absolutely destructive. It's not going to get anybody anywhere. You're not going to progress. There's always going to be that stagnation. So it's no wonder why people come up with quips, people come up with things of saying, well, we could follow that Marxist route, right? We could follow that and just put it in different contexts, right? Just put it in different ways that this is the way it is. This is the way these things are, and become comfortable with it somehow, some way. be able to deal with this and say, oh, well, it's fine. You know, well, they believe in a dead guy that resurrected, right? That's, he's essentially a zombie, as I've heard atheists put it, right? It's not correct. Like, none of this is a correct attitude to have, because if you think that religion is just quantifiable to everything that is classified as a church of something or a religion of something, it's not the way to go about it. No wonder why people think that's an opiate for the masses. No wonder why people think the way they do and have the general attitudes that they do towards it, because the contextualization of it all, it's like, oh, well, why do I just need to do this? This is just going through the motions. This is nothing, right? This means nothing to me. And that's just it, where it's like, okay, if you're not getting anything out of it, it's if you've lost faith and if it's dead to you, then yeah, I mean, there is that general attitude towards it. And, frankly, being a human being, you can't really blame people for that kind of attitude if they have such an attitude towards it. But unironically, I mean, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. You should. It should go deeper for somebody. It should, seeking something deeper. And this is why the Bolshevik persecution was so strong in Russia against, the Orthodox Church, right? And this is why you had somebody like Marx, so embodied by Lenin and Stalin and the progenitors of all of that evil, that gets pushed aside in art, unfortunately, in the history books, right? So the problem is that that led to a greater evil, that led to a much deeper evil, and it became on it started on a very human level. And I mean, people can complain about the Holocaust, and say all these things they want, right? But the Holodomor was there as well. If you're not cautious to the Holodomor and what happened on the other side of the coin, then you're not seeing the overall I mean, the overall arching evil on both sides. See, and that's just it, where it's like you can come up with these tropes, you can come up with these quips and things like that, and quantify it. Say whatever you want, say whatever buzzword there is. But the problem is that the truth is there, and when it's there and right in front of right in front of your face, well, then, I mean, like, why wouldn't you try to pick it up and examine it and reconnect with, what you think might not be an opiate, right? Might not be something that's going to embrace death.